Coming up on this episode of Third Down Chirp, we'll recap the big win against the Eastern Michigan Eagles. We'll talk to rising star running back Juwan Edwards, and we'll break down this weekend's matchup against the Clemson Tigers. It's third down, Ball State football fans. Time for Third Down Chirp.
Ball State Sports Link's Third Down Chirp is delivered by Papa John's. Better ingredients, better pizza. Visit papajohns.com today for more info.
Hello and welcome into week 2 of Third Down Chirp for the 2012 season. I'm your host, Chris Rankel, alongside, as always, Pat Boylan and Timmy Fogarty. Guys, football season's finally back, and it came in with a bang.
Yeah, not the easiest first game if you're Ball State. You like to have that buffer in before you start MAC play, but you had to get right into it. If you're Ball State, 11-point win against Eastern Michigan, I don't think you could ask for more.
Biggest thing, 1-0. Start the season off. You're undefeated right now. We're heading down south this weekend, so not nearly the same opponent, but it feels good to be 1-0.
Does feel good, and it feels good for the Cardinals getting back to their winning ways that they had last year. 37-26, the victory against Eastern Michigan last Thursday night in front of a pretty electric crowd of over 12,000 fans in a game, Pat, dominated top to bottom by the Cardinals.
And we talked about how important it would be to key in on Alex Gillette. And he got some yardage and some statistical numbers, 232 yards passing, 81 yards rushing. But the key to me is he had very few back-breaking runs. 2 years ago against Eastern Michigan, he had a bunch of those third and long runs where he would pick up the yardage. And in fact, Eastern Michigan was only 3 of 12 on third down and 1 of 10 on their final 10 third down conversions. Terrific numbers for the Ball State defense.
Great job by Ball State defense. Not very good at all last season on third down conversions, defending those. But the defense overall, top to bottom, didn't give up any huge plays, so good job by them. But what caught me by the most surprise was the balance in the offense. 596 yards of total offense for the Cardinals, and they ran 96 plays. That right there just blows my mind. Keith Winning, we knew how he could play. We knew he'd be good, 267 yards and 64% completion percentage. But Juwan Edwards, wow, 20 carries on 202 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, to have that kind of balance in your offense, that's a really good feeling.
And it was a great night last Thursday night. A big crowd came out to see the Ball State Cardinals opening guns up against Eastern Michigan. And early on, it looked like Ball State was unstoppable. Juwan Edwards from 7 yards out. Ball State would take a 13-0 lead in the first quarter.
That run by Edwards capped off the perfect drive. You could not ask for a better opening drive if you're Ball State.
But Eastern Michigan would come roaring back. Alex Gillette to Donald Scott. Eastern Michigan would tie it up right before the half. Going into the locker room, the game was tied at 13. But coming out again, Ball State firing on all cylinders. Juwan Edwards, 75 yards for the touchdown.
Edwards, usually known for playing between the tackles, but explodes here and really raises a lot of people's eyebrows.
A career day for Edwards, 200 yards rushing on 20 carries. That's a 10-yard average. Could not have gone better for the sophomore. And how about Horatio Banks, also having a good day in his first collegiate start. He gets a touchdown here, adding some pretty good numbers to the running game. And Juwan Edwards, this was his day, his 3rd rushing touchdown of the game. Ball State at one point, Pat, would go up 30-17. It looked like they could not be stopped.
Juwan's 75-yard run broke a career best. This 3rd touchdown tied a career best. Quite a day for the sophomore.
But the running game would not stop with Banks and Edwards. As Barrington Scott, he said his leg wasn't 100%, couldn't tell on that run. Scott would also contribute to the Cardinals' ground game, but Keith Wenning, another solid day through the air. Here he hooks up with Jamil Smith. Just misses the touchdown. What a play by Jamil.
Jamil has his man beaten. Look at him right there, just disgusted. The ball hits his fingertips and down at the 2.
Eastern would make one more run. Gillette would run this one into the end zone, but it was too little too late. Ball State well in control of this one by the 4th quarter.
And Gillette got his numbers, but most importantly, Chris, no back-breaking runs when it really mattered.
In front of a 12,000-plus crowd, Cardinals get their first win of the season at Schumann Stadium. And in the win against Eastern Michigan, Pat, so many guys played well. The team as a whole played well. But if you had to pin it on one guy as your player of the game, who would it be?
I get the easy choice because I guess you asked me first, but I'll go with Jawan Edwards, the MAC West Player of the Week. Edwards with 200-plus yards rushing on just 20 carries, had a 75-yard run that went the distance, breaking his career-long rush. But his most impressive run to me came in the fourth quarter when Ball State was faced with a 4th and 1, chose to go for it. He was stopped at the line for a few seconds, kept the feet moving, got the first down, and continued the drive, allowed Ball State to run a lot of clock off. I'll tell you what, I know he's not going to play like that every week, Timmy, but if he can simulate that performance for the future, it's going to be a good year for Ball State.
Oh, the running game all around was extremely impressive, but to me, the player that I really didn't expect to have the game he had was Jameel Smith. I mean, Jameel came out of nowhere, had 119 yards receiving, 7 receptions, so 17 yards a catch against a pretty good Eastern Michigan defense last year statistically, and Jameel is the smallest player in the FBS. So in these type of cases, sometimes you lose where he is, you can't find him in the defense because he's so small. His size actually works to his advantage sometimes.
Now, Ball State and Eastern Michigan, the only in-conference matchup for last week, but the rest of the conference plenty busy as we take a look around the MAC presented by Fox College Sports. Starting off with a Bowling Green taking on Florida in the Swamp, but in the end, Florida edges out Bowling Green 27-14, a game, Pat, a lot closer than the score indicated.
It was a lot closer, a 13-point win, but Bowling Green was there the whole game. I was impressed with their quarterback, Matt Shields, and how well he played against an SEC defense.
Iowa beats Northern Illinois just 18-17. Timmy, heartbreaker for the Huskies.
You have to feel bad for Northern Illinois. It always seems like when they play these power conference teams, they're right there till the very end and they just can't pull it out.
Arizona needed overtime to top Toledo 24-17, just a miss for the Rockets.
2 years ago, Arizona went into Toledo and dominated that game. Now, this is not that same Arizona team, but if you're Toledo, you got to feel good. You were right there with a Pac-12 opponent.
And the big win of the week for the Mid-American Conference, Ohio tops Penn State in an emotional day at Happy Valley, 24-14.
Got to tip your cap to OU to be able to go into that hostile environment of Penn State, emotions running high, and pull out a big victory in Happy Valley.
Now, Ball State fans, get excited. Your Cardinals are at the top of the Mid-American Conference for at least a few weeks. The rest of the conference won't start in-conference play for a couple weeks.
And when you look at the overall standings, Ball State and Central Michigan were the only two teams in the West to get a win. And while that may not be the most significant thing considering the rest of those games were not conference games, when it comes down to it, if Ball State's bowl eligible again, you like seeing that overall win percentage having the Cardinals at the top.
In Ball State, maybe before the season they didn't like how they had to play a MAC game first game of the season. Now they're sitting pretty, 1-0 already. They don't play another MAC game for a while, so it feels good to be undefeated right now.
It does feel good, and the Eastern game was a great way to start off the 2012 season for Ball State, but now they turn their attention to a very tough and nationally ranked Clemson Tigers team. We caught up with a few players after practice to ask them about this weekend's game.
I just ask that the O-line just get praised as much as I do. They're the one that started it off. It starts up front with them, and they took on the challenge. Over the summer, I just try to get better every day, and we're working hard every day, just consistent. I just shed weight, and I was able to bust that long run Thursday night. They're beatable. Every team's beatable, and we just got to come out there with our detail and effort to beat them. It starts up front with the line. As long as they're getting the push, all I can do is run the ball hard, just focus on the blocks when they're coming, protect the quarterback, and that's all I can do.
One of the old adages of coaching is establish the run, and we had a chance to do that. Now, the first hats off goes to the O-line and Coach Tabaka. I mean, they did a great job, and I thought, all three running backs that played well, but, it starts up front, and we did a nice job there. The depth and, at the running back position, guys are always getting banged up. So the first thing is you feel good that no matter what happens to the first two guys, you still got a couple other guys that can go in and get the job done and get you out with a win. The thing that we got to do is just worry about ourselves and do what we do every week, and I think that's the thing that we preach to our guys is we're going to win with the things that we always win with, is being more, playing with more effort and playing with more detail than everybody else, and that's what's going to help us beat Eastern Michigan. That's what's going to help us beat Clemson, and we got to just do what we do.
My overall thoughts is, we did good the first half. We kept them 13 points, but the second half we was inconsistent. We was letting them off the hook and other things, and not tackling and giving up deep balls and not let up a pass. They're athletic and they're big. They're all over 6'2", over 200 pounds, and they can run. But they're real smooth with their routes. So, we've been working on our back pedal and our coverages and stuff, so, we've been watching a lot of film on it. They're just another opponent. There is no different between them and Eastern Michigan, But the thing we've been working on is the hurry-up offense. It's real quick, 10 seconds is real quick. So we've been working on having two scout teams going back and forth so we can be ready for it. He's athletic, real athletic. He's like RG3. He's real athletic and he's big. He can run, he can throw, he has good eyes. So it's going to be a challenge.
And a tall task for the Ball State Cardinals this weekend. Number 12 Clemson at Death Valley. Not going to be easy as we take a closer look at these two teams. Starting at the quarterback position, really for Clemson, this is where it starts, Pat. Taj Boyd, the face of the team, and really the offense runs through him.
And in some ways, it's similar to Gillette because he can run the football, he can pass the football, but Taj Boyd, an elite quarterback in the nation, he's going to be very tough for Ball State to stop. But on the other hand, Timmy, Keith Wenning, he's no slouch himself.
Absolutely not. Keith Wenning, the leader of this offense now, finally a junior, has experience under his belt. Hopefully going into Death Valley won't get him rattled or anything. So hopefully, he can keep that confidence up with that successful offense from last week.
And the quarterbacks, one known for his running ability, one not so much, but this game really features two guys who can really run the ball in Juwan Edwards and Andre Ellington.
And Andre Ellington, Chris, a player that was hurt his sophomore year, wasn't 100% possibly going into his junior year, but has now had a full offseason, a full healthy offseason, and you're really seeing the results pay off. Over 9 yards a carry, 228 rushing yards against an SEC defense in Auburn. Those are impressive stats.
Absolutely. Andre Ellington, a great player, but Juwan Edwards, just his explosiveness. He showed that week 1 win, busted that 75-yarder, in the third quarter. That was just absolutely amazing to me, and 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's a player you're going to have to watch not just this game against a good defense, but the entire season.
Now Edwards is playing pretty close to his home. Grew up in Matthews, North Carolina, just about a 4-hour drive from Clemson. This game also features a couple good wide receivers. No Sammy Watkins for Clemson, but no problem really last week. DeAndre Hopkins picked up the slack.
And Coach Sweeney said, Sammy Watkins gets all the attention, but he's never coached a better receiver than DeAndre Hopkins. That's pretty high praise for the junior, and he's a guy who comes right in and fills Sammy Watkins' shoes. Look at those stats, 119 yards on 13 receptions. If Ball State thinks they're going to have some kind of step down going to Hopkins, I think they're in for a rude awakening.
Oh, absolutely. Hopkins, an explosive player. Also, on Ball State's side, another explosive player, Jameel Smith. Anytime this guy catches the ball, he's so quick, he's so elusive, and I'm going to talk about his size again because you can't talk about it enough. He's so small that sometimes you can't see him. Behind big offensive lines or, behind linebackers and stuff, you just lose sight of him. He catches the ball, and just his explosiveness will really work in his advantage.
Coach Dabo Swinney saying this week that Smith is a guy you have to know where he is on the field at all times. Now, defensively, these two teams, both good defensive performances. They put up similar numbers last week.
Yeah, but the keys with both of these teams are the offenses, and both teams like to run a lot of plays, and we'll see how the defenses are tested. But at least both defenses will be used to a high number of plays and quick repetitions. But Clemson played an Auburn team last week who has a pretty good offense and were able to hold them enough to get the job done offensively. Similarly for Ball State, we were through 3 quarters and the Cardinals had only given up 13 points. So I think both of these teams, while they see lots of improvements they can make with their defenses, have to be pretty pleased with the week 1 performance.
One advantage I will get that you just can't ignore is that the fact that Clemson is used to playing athleticism and quick things. So guys like Jameel Smith or Juwan Edwards, they're no stranger to that. So I think Clemson has an advantage in that case, but Ball State defense much improved from last season, has a lot of confidence going into this weekend.
Now, Clemson wins 77% of their games in Death Valley. That's a hard mark to match. Now, if Ball State wants to play David to this Goliath, Pat, who's going to have to really play well?
I think the running back battle is going to be an interesting one to watch. You've got Ellington versus Edwards, and two guys that showed their worth last year, and everybody has kind of become accustomed to those names, but had big games opening up as Ellington carved up that SEC Auburn defense. And, of course, Edwards was MAC West Player of the Week this past game. I think it's time to see if Edwards can continue to progress his game. We've seen what he can do against MAC defenses. Now he's going to face an ACC defense and a good one in Clemson. It'll be interesting to see if Juwan Edwards is ready to make that leap against top-tier talent.
I'm going to go with quarterbacks, Pat. Taj Boyd pretty much has everything that you expect. He has the size, the arm strength, the athleticism, all of that. But Keith Wenning has a couple things I don't think Taj Boyd has as much of. He really controls the game. He controls his huddle. And we saw last week, if Wenning can complete some easy passes, guys, at the beginning of the game, he gets in a rhythm, and this Ball State offense is tough to stop. If he can complete some passes right away, get some confidence up, get the ball to Juwan a little bit, make something happen, it's going to be pretty interesting for Keith Wenning on Saturday.
Hard to imagine a better start to this season Ball State had last Thursday, but if you had to pin it on one or two things the Cardinals needed to improve on, what would it be?
Well, when you look at the player aspect, it is tough to pick someone because no one really stuck out as having a bad game. Something I'd like to see, though, is an improvement from Willie Snead. First of all, he had 2 penalties in the first quarter, one which appeared to negate points as he had a pass interference penalty down to the 1, and Ball State only ended up getting a field goal out of that. He also had a holding penalty on a long Juwan Edwards run. You'd like to see him take those penalty numbers down, but also we've seen what this young kid can do, especially against Army where he had his coming out party. I'd like to see him give Jamil Smith a little bit of support on the other side of the wide receiving core. I think Willie Snead can have a big day against Clemson.
I'm also going to stay with receivers. I'm going to go with Connor Ryan. I think that's very important for another receiver to step up, just like Willie Snead. Like you mentioned, Jamil Smith had a big game last week. But here's the thing. Winning, great game, 267 yards passing. But the thing that really hurts is 0 touchdowns. So this Cardinal team needs to be able to put the ball in the air into the end zone, especially against an athletic defense like this. So I'm going to stay with Connor Ryan. He's got maturity, he has experience, and his players, most importantly, respect him. So I think they'll listen to him. They see certain things. I really would like to see Connor Ryan step up on the big stage this weekend.
It's a hard thing to do to win on the road, even harder in one of the toughest atmospheres in all of college sports. A lot of things have to go Ball State's way if they want to pull off that upset. What are the keys to this week's game?
A lot of times time of possession can be an overrated statistic, but in this game, I think it might tell a lot of the story. If you're Ball State, I think you have to focus on putting together long, sustaining, methodical drives that go for 10 or 15 plays and can take up 6 to 7 minutes of time. What that allows you to do, A, it keeps guys like Boyd, Ellington, and Hopkins on the bench, but B, it also kind of demoralizes a defense. When you've been on the field for 6-7 minutes, you run a lot of plays, and most importantly, you stick it in the end zone for 7. I think if Ball State can do that, I think that's when you see a lot of upsets. When the small guy beats the big guy happens, is when the small guy, if you're Ball State in this scenario, can keep control of the ball for long periods of time.
The Cardinals, if they're going to be successful, there's one thing: they have to hold on to the football. They cannot afford to turn the ball over. Clemson's defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, was at Oklahoma last year, caused a little bit of shake in the Cardinal offense when they went to Norman last year. So I think one of the biggest things is this defensive coordinator is familiar with Ball State. Ball State needs to be familiar with him and not turn the ball over, get in a rhythm, not force dumb passes right away so they can get some confidence building off that.
These two teams have met up twice in the past, once in 1992, a 24-10 win for Clemson, and again in 2002, same result, 30-7 win for the Tigers. Pat, what is your prediction for this time?
Well, Ball State's 26-27 point underdog, so they've got a lot of making up ground to do, and I think this is a Ball State team that can move the ball against the Clemson defense. I don't think the Clemson defense by any means is going to overpower the Ball State offense. I think the Cardinals can move the ball, I think they can score points, and I think they will score points. I see the Cardinals keeping it competitive early, but in the end, Clemson has a whole lot of athletes that Ball State might have a tough job controlling. I'm going to say Clemson comes out, wins this game 42-20, but in a game that Ball State won't feel bad about at the end of the game.
Pat, I agree with you. I think it's going to be close at the very beginning of the game just because, Ball State plays very well at the beginning of games and in the third quarter. Those are 2 quarters where they always play extremely well no matter, what the situation is. But ultimately, I just think there's too much athleticism with Clemson. They have too much size, too much speed, too much all-around talent that I think just staying with them for 4 quarters is just going to be too difficult. I'm going to go Clemson 49, Ball State 17.
We're going to have to wait till Saturday, 12:30 to the kickoff to see if these guys' predictions are correct. You can't make it to the game. You can always listen to us on SportsLink Radio 91.3 WCRD. All right, it's now time for our What's Chirpin' question of the week. You can either tweet at us with hashtag #TweetPete or at Third Down Chirp. If we pick your question and answer it on air, you get a free Papa John's pizza. Our question this week comes from at KG Binder, who tweets, does playing on the road against Oklahoma last year help the, quote, shock factor of playing in front of a hostile crowd? Pat, it's kind of the X factor in this one, as we've said previously on this show. Death Valley, one of the hardest atmospheres to play in college football. It's a valid point.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. You look at last year, Ball State played in a tough environment when they played South Florida and a very tough environment when they played Oklahoma. So I definitely think that could help this year, especially when you look at the fact that most of these players from the team that played those 2 games are back and have this experience. And if you remember against the South Florida game, Ball State opened the game fumbling the opening kickoff, and South Florida was on the board 7-0 before you could even blink. Now, the Oklahoma game didn't necessarily go better, but in terms of starting it, remember, Ball State recovered the onside kick, got a field goal early. I think this will play a big role. I think Ball State is in much better position right now than they were a year ago today.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, just people don't really understand, you know, how big of a difference that is, especially offensively. You go out there, you can't hear. Your center can't hear you. He has to look between his legs to see when you're going to snap the ball. I mean, no one can hear you. Trying to change plays, it can't happen. So I think playing in those type of situations and environments last year makes a huge difference this year, especially with Keith winning at quarterback, having experienced that already.
Thank you for your question at KG Binder. You have won a free Papa John's pizza. If you didn't get selected this week, be sure to tweet at us, #TweetPete or at Third Down Chirp, a question, and you get a chance again next week. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Third Down Chirp. Thank you for tuning in. If you can't make it out to the game on Saturday, be sure to listen to the three of us on the radio, 91.3 Sports Link Radio on WCRD. If you want the latest Ball State sporting news, like us on Facebook, Ball State Sports Link, or follow us on Twitter at BSU Sports Link. You can catch us on Fox College Sports, Comcast Indiana, and WIPB locally in Muncie. Special thanks to everyone on the Sports Link crew for helping us out today. And until next week, I'm Chris Rankel. He's Pat Boylan. He's Timmy Fogarty. We'll see you next week.
Similar numbers or at least an impressive performance up against an SEC defense.
I'm going to stay with the quarterback.
That's an ACC defense.
Yeah.
Oh, piss.